What's going on, everybody? It's your boy JRich, back for another episode of Across the Pod with my main man Tom. Now you might see a little TRizz action. He's been begging me for weeks. Please, Jordan, change the graphics, make me TRizz. So now you got JRich and T-Rizz. Tom is back from his vacation. He was doing some skiing and raving out in France. I mean, the guy's just living the life. But Tom, how are you feeling, and how is it to be back in London?
Look at that, you nailed the intro. We were slightly worried before the show that you'd fuck it up, but you did it well, and it's nice to come back, be TRizz and T-Rizz. Finally, the fans have been calling for it. I've seen Kiers in the chat every week. Where's T-Rizz? Where's T-Rizz? So nice to be upgraded. I've had a Pokemon evolution from Tom to T-Rizz, but yeah, it's nice to be back. Talk a little bit about FPL, the games, kind of like going a bit all over the place at the minute. We've got some double game weeks coming up. We've got some good fixtures. Man City continue to be hot and cold. It's hard to judge. But yeah, excited to talk about it through this week. I think let's talk about fixtures. Let's talk about who to target. We got a couple of graphics as well from different creators out there. So I think it's a good place to start, really.
Yeah, game week 23 is here. We have the double game week for Liverpool and Everton next week, so we may touch on that a little bit as well. But let's start off how we always like to start things off, previewing all the games for game week 23 and bring up your fabulous graphics that you bring to the show every week. So let's get into it right now, Tom.
I would say my graphics, but it is Rob T FPL on Twitter. Absolutely unbelievable. Every week just gives you like the data you want to see. I don't know why anyone watched this show, because you can just go on his Twitter and see like who the main teams to target are. And the graphics. I mean, look at what Jordan has done. Look at what JRich has done. Look at the bottom of the screen, the anytime goal scorers. This feels like Soccer Saturday right now, and I'm very hyped for it. But the main things to target this week, I mean, it's the first time we've seen for a while a game have over 3 expected goals. And normally it's around 2.5, the highest one. But that Liverpool-Ipswich game just looks so good. And seeing a lot of transfers for Gakpo, which I think a lot of people pivoting from a Watkins, from a Jackson, as you might be yourself in your own team. I think Gakpo looks really good. Rested midweek in Champions League. I don't even think he came off the bench. So with Ipswich at home, double game week, and then I think they've got Wolves at home the game week after. The next 3 game weeks, but 4 games for Liverpool look fantastic. I guess the only question is the rotation angle. But with Gakpo pretty much guaranteed to play Ipswich, and then one of the double game week, and then Wolves at home, I absolutely love him. Salah, I would not bet against him for captaincy this week. A few people I've seen going Isak, which I don't hate, but I'm just, Newcastle expected 2.5 goals against Southampton. Southampton have been absolutely woeful, and Isak has obviously been absolutely prolific. But you can just see how last game Newcastle, after a 6-game winning streak or something, kind of just like took the foot off the gas, and I'd much rather back Mo Salah in that fixture. To be honest, there's a lot of other fixtures on there which kind of like don't quite excite me that much. Tottenham, I've just kind of completely avoided now. I don't have any Tottenham assets.
Terrible.
And then Villa's the other one, which I think is a good game week if you still have Watkins, still have Rodgers, still have one of the defenders. I like West Ham at home. But again, I probably wouldn't be looking to bring them in. I feel like this week's actually all just about Liverpool. They put Foden on the graphic here. Obviously, Foden the last 2 game weeks, 15 and 16 points is absolutely crazy. But Man City did a pretty bad job in the Champions League again, and it's just a team that if you don't own them, I just don't necessarily. I think they've got Chelsea, then they play Arsenal, and then they play Newcastle. So like 3 pretty tough.
Then
fixtures.
Liverpool at home, and then Spurs away. So it's a pretty tough stretch for them. Spurs doesn't sound bad offensively, but they're not playing very well either, so it's tough.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for a team that, we're so used to them being so prolific and being like, you want to triple up on Man City, it feels really weird to say that you probably don't want any Man City assets for that run. We have Erling Haaland in our team, but we'll probably look to offload him and spread the funds. Like, it kind of hasn't really paid off having him in the team. So is there anything else on there which you think you want to highlight, or any of the other Liverpool players we should be targeting?
I don't think so. The Liverpool run is so interesting because you have the double game week, but that double game week actually stretches from like the 1st to the 12th. And then they have the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup in between. So while, yes, it's a long stretch between the games, they do have 2 separate cup games. And I almost feel like maybe they're going to kind of throw the game against Tottenham because they're already down 1-0. Like, I don't know if they're really going to try and win the Carabao Cup, and then they have, I think, Plymouth in the FA Cup 4th round.
Okay.
So, like, again, probably not going to be too tough for Liverpool, but it depends. Like, are they going to try and play everybody or are they not? I was happy to see Salah get a goal this week in the Champions League, so that was great. They have another Champions League fixture next week, but in terms of the double game week, like, I really think it is just Salah, Trent, and Gakpo. Like, I don't know who else you could rely on to play the most minutes other than those 3 guys. And obviously Salah's going to play every single game. He's been playing games he probably shouldn't be playing anyways. But then you look to Gakpo and he seems like the next best thing in terms of solidified offensively. You know, you could go Luis Diaz if you want, but it seems like Gakpo's more in favor than Diaz right now. So I'm kind of with you. I'd be looking to transfer in Gakpo as probably that 3rd guy if you're already planning on having Trent and Salah as 2 of your main Liverpool assets.
And do you like Trent as an asset? Like, he's obviously pretty expensive for a defender, and he seems like he either gets 1 point or 11 points, and it's a lot of money. But then again, if Liverpool are clicking and they've got 4 good fixtures with, I mean, the clean sheet potential there, 52%, looks pretty good from a Trent perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of Trent, but especially with the way people are constructing their teams right now, like some people are even going down the sell Cole Palmer train, which I'm not quite there yet. But when you don't have a Holland in your team, you're so able to spread those funds very vastly, and you don't have Salah Saka, who's still not back because he's not back for a couple more months still. So I think, like, when it comes down to it, who has the highest upside in defense? It's still Trent, like, pretty much no matter what, because he has such an offensive threat. You could look to other assets because maybe you're saving a little bit of money, but chances are you're going to have enough if you don't have too many very expensive assets to have a Trent plus a Salah and a Palmer and still be able to make the rest of your team work. Because for us, we have Isak at 8.4 million. He's up at 9.5 million now, but you should have had Isak for weeks and weeks at this point because he's been playing well. I think the question really comes down to it is, who do you pick at forward? Because you're probably going to bring in Gakpo. You probably already have Isak, and then you have to figure out who that 3rd guy is going to be. Is it Chris Wood? Is it Mateta? Is it Ollie Watkins? Is it Duran, who's probably going to start this week? Like, there's a lot of ways you could go, and you want to probably keep it a little bit cheaper, but there's so many cheap options in the midfield and in defense, especially, that I think putting Trent into your team is very, very attainable.
Yeah, okay, I love that. The only thing I was going to say about selling Cole Palmer is it would feel pretty therapeutic after I captained him this week. When it gets everyone backing that he's going to play, everyone thought he was injured. He plays 90 minutes, they win 3-1 and 2 points. So the Salah captain has got 3 points for the clean sheet. Absolutely devastated.
But to be fair, though, Madueke jacked his assist. He should have gotten an assist off that free kick from the left side. And then I forget who it was who did the header. Maybe it was Caicedo. And then Madueke, right on the goal line, steals, would have been an assist and a big 6 points for everyone who captained Cole Palmer.
Just the way it goes sometimes, isn't it? So next thing I want to talk about, the projected goal scorers, the data that's running along the bottom of your screen right now. Look at those graphics. This isn't just a cheap YouTube show anymore. We've got the pennies rolling in. But I just think to really drive home that main point about Salah captain, like expected goals 0.99 this week, 63% to get 1+. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't go for Salah unless you just really want to back Isak this week. Darwin obviously right up there, but I don't think Darwin necessarily starts.
Those are the numbers I think if he starts, right? Like those are the projected goals if he starts.
Exactly. And I don't even back Haaland as much as 0.72 against Chelsea. Like his stats were pretty high last week, and I just don't see City being as prolific. It's weird because they kind of get like the one game where they score 5 and then all of a sudden it kind of like unwinds again, and it looks like they're just, for whatever reason, they just can't play out the back. They're not dominating games, they're not dominating possession. So for me, I think Salah's the only option for captaincy. Isak maybe like a 20% for me, but otherwise I just don't see it.
Yeah, Ipswich is just too bad, man. Like I'm kind of with you. I thought about going Isak just because, to your point, maybe Salah is so overweight for a lot of managers that maybe the Isak captain is a bit of a differential, and if somehow he outscores him. But with Salah scoring this past week, I think he's kind of ready to go on another run again. He had double blanks 2 weeks in a row, scored this week though, kind of got over that hump, and I think he's ready to really have a big game against Ipswich, because Liverpool, while they're not really in any spot to lose a league quite yet, they can continue to stack points against some of these bad teams, and I think they have a massive game against Ipswich.
Yeah, exactly. And I think an interesting thing for your third striker spot is I've been a big fan of Raul Jimenez the whole way through
Okay.
for his
Yeah.
stats, and his underlying data is absolutely fantastic. But since I've owned him, he's kind of been so hit and miss that I
Yeah.
just think you're probably better off going with a 90-minute man of a Mateta, for example, who, you know, does often, when he scores one, tends to get two, can go on and really get double digits. And I think obviously he's a bit more money, so if you have the budget, but I think Brentford at home is a good game for him. Obviously Raul is still pretty good. Like United at home is, we feels weird to say still, but it's just still a fantastic game with how badly they're playing.
Yeah.
And then Gakpo is probably the other one which you want to be looking at from a third striker perspective.
Yeah, no, I'm with it. It's really just the only other guy that I think I've thought about potentially is Wissa, and the only reason why is because while people are talking about the fixture swing after game week 24, like Palace away, Spurs at home, those aren't terrible fixtures at all, and especially the Spurs one, like the manager came out today and said they only have 13 healthy first team players right now. So they're still very thin. And I believe it was Sarr who they lost and probably isn't going to play this week. So even Wissa, if you want to bring him in a little bit early, he'll probably rise in the coming weeks as those fixtures swing, and Bumo probably going to rise as well. So I would expect that. But yeah, he's kind of the only other one I thought about. But you kind of hit the nail on the head on the main guys, and especially going into game week 24, like you probably want to have multiple Liverpool assets. And then would you ever consider having multiple Everton assets, because they do have the double game week as well?
The main man, Mikolenko. We've been talking about it from game week 1. I don't actually hate double Everton. I think they always turn up against Liverpool. And I think the way Liverpool are poised for this game is like so much pressure on them. And Everton are like seeing it as a massive opportunity to kind of uproot their title hopes. And I think it being at Goodison Park as well really favours Everton. Like they can kind of make it a bit of a fortress. They just come back off the back of a big win. We'll see how they do this week. But I don't know. It's kind of one of those games that in the past it has been 0-0 Liverpool, Everton, and Liverpool have come away like feeling a little bit disappointed, but also a little bit like felt lucky to get away with it. And I've seen Everton like nick 3 points at Liverpool before, so it's not out the realm of possibility. I still back Liverpool to go and get 3 points, but I don't think it's going to be a complete steamroll for that. So that's kind of like why, the double game week is an interesting one from a Liverpool perspective, because I think it does look really good on paper. But then again, it's kind of like, imagine you have Gakpo, he plays 90 minutes against Everton, it's 0-0, and then they're rotating for the next game. And it's kind of like you've changed your whole team for like 90 minutes or like 2 60-minute games. I don't think it's like the double game week of dreams that everyone's expecting. But I do still think, if I was going to have anyone that week, I would rather a Liverpool game for two game weeks. So
for sure, yeah. And I only brought that up because maybe you want to, as your cheap third striker, it could be Calvert-Lewin, right? Because they do have Leicester next week, going into game week 24 for the first game, and then they have the Liverpool game. And for some reason, if he scores, you've probably found a lot of money potentially, because he's only 1.6 started right now in the team. And so it would be a pretty big differential. And he does have the double game week, so he could have a base of 4 points right off the bat, which would be pretty good.
Yeah, and I do like that Calvert-Lewin. How do you say Calvert-Lewin? Calvert-Lewin?
Calvert-Lewin?
I like that little bit of flair on his name there.
I got you.
I think he's the sort of player that gets the chances. He just hasn't been as prolific as he has been in previous seasons. Just doesn't seem to be quite there in terms of goal scoring. But maybe with the new manager, with Moyes back in, I think
I'm looking at his numbers right now. He scored his first goal in game week 22 since game week 4.
Yeah, exactly. But if you look at his expected goal involvements, it's actually pretty good. Like he's there or thereabouts. Especially earlier in the season, if you look down, his expected goals are pretty good in games, but doesn't actually do anything. And misses big one-on-ones. And I guess the way with Sean Dyche was playing is a little bit more defensive, so he doesn't tend to get much opportunities. But what are the fixtures like for Everton outside of the double game week?
They're okay.
Brighton,
pretty mixed.
Leicester, Liverpool. Yeah. The thing is like the double game week, they have Leicester at home and then Liverpool at home. I'm actually tempted by Calvert-Lewin now. You've kind of put me on that bandwagon.
Right, you won't get any negatives defensively, right? Because the defense is where you're starting to really play with fire. Because if Liverpool just destroys them, there'll be massive negatives defensively. But in the midfield or offensively, if you want to make him your third guy, like I don't hate it. It's not a move that I think a lot of people are going to make. And even if you wanted to have him for Brighton away, Brighton's not playing overly well either. They're playing a little bit better now that Pedro's in better form, but they definitely still are conceding goals as it stands right now. So I think all options are definitely on the table and can be great going forward. If you want to make him, again, 5.4 million, definitely a very nice option. But I see that you pulled up something for us, so let's get into it.
Yeah. I think DCL's one to watch for this week, so I'm going to watch them against Brighton away. I'm going to make an effort to watch and see how Everton play. But yeah, the last thing I wanted to bring up is obviously like FPL Focal does his experts video every week, and I just think it's just a nice way of like, if you don't see anything else this week, it's just like looking at what the best players are doing. It's kind of like a good indication of what you should be following of the trend of players to bring in. And I think it's kind of like what we've seen, right? The two main players, the experts, the top, active teams are bringing in is Gakpo and Trent for Ipswich at home, and then for the double game week, and then what Wolves at home. So for me, I think in our team we should be looking to get Gakpo and Trent. They're probably the two best players if we want to bring in. And then it's interesting you mentioned Wissa and Brentford, because Wissa and Burmo seem to be players that the masses aren't going for, but the players who are really good and interested in the game are actually targeting. And I thought Wissa was unlucky to come away with no points in the last game, considering he had like 6 big chances, like 1 cleared off the line. And I just like the way that he's, well priced, playing 90 minutes at the focal point of Brentford's team. I wouldn't target Mbeumo as much given his price point and the midfield being like a little bit of an easier position to fill. But I do think you're right there. Mikolenko, interesting 9% people bringing him in, but I just don't see the point of bringing in an Everton asset right now, in defence at least. So I think this is all to say is Gakpo and Trent. That's kind of like the main essence of this video, right?
Well, yeah, and you need to rub it in that everyone's transferring out Jackson and he's still in my team, because I don't want to burn a transfer to get him out when I'm planning on wildcarding either this week or heading into next week. But yeah, everyone's dumping Jackson because he's been terrible and he can't score to save his life. Cunha, I'm surprised people are dropping, but there is talks of him potentially transferring in this transfer window. Timber, Raya, no surprises there. Your thoughts quickly, Tom, on Arsenal defense, because I am pretty much all the way out on Arsenal defense. I sold Gabriel to make some moves. It just doesn't make sense. They're conceding too many goals. They're not getting clean sheets. Right now, you'd rather have Forest assets or Liverpool assets because they're the leaders right now in clean sheets. Arsenal just not getting it done for me in terms defensively. But how do you feel about them going forward? I've seen some people still having Gabriel in their teams because of what he can do offensively from time to time.
Yeah, I think you got to be pretty pragmatic about it. I think Gabriel is probably still one of the best defenders in the game, like great clean sheet potential every week, great goal threat. But outside of that, like I've not owned an Arsenal asset in defense in my team the whole season. I think when Arsenal are clicking and they've got Saka and Odegaard and everyone's fit and they've got the full best 11 out and they're playing good football, it's hard to bet against Arsenal defense. Like you're more likely to get a clean sheet. But the way they've been playing recently, and the amount of pressure that seems to be on Arteta, and they're not playing fluid football, and they're conceding silly goals, which they don't normally concede. I just think there's too much money tied up in an Arsenal fence right now. I'd completely shift the money out of there. I'd probably keep Gabriel if you have money invested in him, or if you just want one Arsenal asset, it's probably going to be him. But outside of that, I don't actually see, even outside of the goalkeeper defense, I wouldn't want any of the midfield or strike like forwards for Arsenal right now. So I just think they're kind of a team where until they get a good fixture run start to click, I'd probably be jumping off them.
Yeah, they still need a striker, right? And that's the biggest problem is they had Jesus and he was playing great and you thought maybe things would turn around a little bit in Saka's absence, but just hasn't happened. And I did want to bring this up for you because I do think it's very similar to our conversation, right? Wissa, and you look at his expected goals, only 0.3 against Liverpool, but 1.63 against City and 1.38 against Southampton. So he is playing very, very well. And again, the Palace fixture doesn't really scare me. The Tottenham fixture doesn't scare me with how bad their defense is. And I'm pretty sure we're still waiting on their defenders to come back. And then even after that, they have a great run with West Ham, Leicester, Everton, Villa at home, and Bournemouth away, which a little bit tougher because Bournemouth is playing quite well, but still a great fixture run for a player like Wissa. And at 6.2 mil, much cheaper than the Chris Woods and some of those around 7 million. Mateta's another one who I think is at 7.2 now for Palace. So he's a more budget forward if you don't want to go all the way down to like the 5.8 to 5.4 range we've been looking at.
That's some great insight. Look at you plotting my DCL Calvert-Lewin double game week straight into Wissa for that run. There's all ticking around in my head right now. But yeah, I guess last thing we need to do is kind of look at our own team. We've got 3 free transfers, right? What are we looking to do?
We have 3 free transfers, and that's where, if you wanted to go with kind of the beginning of your master plan of bringing Gakpo, bringing in that third striker, and switching to Trent in defense, we could get rid of Holland, we could get rid of Jackson, and we probably could get rid of Caldwell, who's injured, or we could upgrade Burgess potentially if you wanted to do that as well. We can kind of go either direction because we don't necessarily have to get rid of Caldwell, who didn't play this week, thankfully for us, because we needed that substitution with Digne. But how would you feel about that? Just getting rid of Holland, getting rid of Jackson, getting rid of, let's say Burgess for now, and upgrading all those spots. And then we'd still have a lot of money left over to kind of move around throughout the weeks.
I like it. I think it's got to be at least Gakpo and Trent, and then I think you're right in saying Wissa's probably the third spot striker that you would want, right?
Well, the thing is that when we're getting rid of a player like Holland, like we have so much money left over. We still have 11.8 million. So we can have any striker we want, basically, who isn't named Erling Haaland as our third guy. And would you rather go more expensive? Would you rather go cheaper? Because even Mateta, you look at his fixtures, they're ridiculously good right now for Palace. And so you could go look to him. But it's kind of also like, how do you want to plan this going forward? Because when you get rid of Holland, you almost want a wild card because of how many changes you can make. But who would you pick? We could have literally anybody, even if you want to go to your boy Chris Wood, who has a terrible run of fixtures, but is playing very, very well. Who is your striker of choice with 11.8 million remaining?
I still think it's not even about the money. I just think Mateta or Wissa are probably the 2 that you want. And I didn't realize how good Mateta's fixtures are, that I would probably lean towards Mateta out of the 2. Given we've got the extra budget, he's on 1.1 million more, but he's scoring goals and their fixtures look fantastic. So I'd probably I'd probably want a front 3 of Gakpo, Mateta, and Isak. And I think that's a hard front 3 to beat right now.
Yep, still have 4.5 million remaining, so that's good for us. Defensively, who would you pick? I'm assuming you're ready to lock these in because I honestly really like these moves a lot. These are all guys I've been targeting and kind of moves I want to make. I just don't have the transfers necessarily to do so. Still love Rodgers, Palmer, Salah, Ahmad if we want to start him, which we probably will because he's been playing pretty well. He's probably a guy, quickly, Tom, your thoughts on Ahmad, because he had that massive week, and we were very thankful for that. But even still going forward, I just don't know if I trust him to play him every week. But at 5.4, he's a fine guy to have either starting or on the bench or just kind of in a rotation with a few guys.
Yeah, I agree with you. I kind of was off Ahmad, and we almost thought about transferring him out. Has the unicorn week of a hat trick, but it wasn't like the Man United fan thinks he's Messi. I think he's fantastic, but he just hasn't been. United just aren't clicking. He's not involved in every play. I'd still rather Bruno if you have anyone from United, but I would just don't even think it's worth it at that point. And then having the option of Rodgers or Ahmad, I'd probably still pick Rodgers. So for me, I think if you have him, it's great. But it may be a player we look to upgrade now that we have an extra bit. How much money do we have left, actually?
We have 4.5 left, but we did use all 3 of those transfers to make that happen.
Yeah. So I guess it just leaves us with 4.5 next week. If we want to get rid of Ahmad, we can bring in Foden or someone look around that price point that kind of is pretty good, 9-10 million mark. Yeah.
No, I like this though. I think we make these transfers, we can lock them in, and then it's just picking the team for this week, right? So Trent, obviously, he's going to go into the team for sure. I think we still like Munoz. We have doubling up on Palace, which I think is fine given the fixture run. That's why we brought in Munoz. Yep. I don't think we talked about that on the pod, but we did bring in Munoz last week, so that was a big move for us. Are you happy with Hall, Trent, and Munoz, Rodgers, Salah, Ahmad, Palmer, Mateta, Gakpo, Isak, and then obviously Mo Salah will be our captain coming into this game week?
I absolutely love that. I think the balance is good. The only player I'd probably look to upgrade next is Ahmad. But I think the defense, attacking-wise, is probably the 3 best attacking defenders you can have. in terms of output, assists, and everything else. Dubravka, I still like with Southampton away. So I think the back looks really good. The front three is probably the best front three you could have for this week. And then Salah, captain, Palmer. It's literally just Rodgers and Amada, probably the 2 weak spot, which you'd expect at that price point. But the balance of the team is really good. And with 4.5 million in the bank, we can really attack, the next few weeks. So I'm feeling pretty positive about it. I'm feeling pretty good.
Yeah, I like it. And I think the other thing that we didn't even talk about is Dubravka maybe at some point we'll have to address. It seems like he's going to play again this week, though, even though Nick Pope is kind of working his way back for Newcastle. But, there's still talks of him maybe being transferred and all of that. But for now, at least, it seems like he will continue to play, and he's been fantastic. So definitely no surprises there. But for now, I think we're good. I love the team, love the lineup, love the captain's pick. But Tom, do you have anything for the people before we head out of here? Because we settled them in. We told them about our transfers. We gave them a few different targets to look at over the next couple of weeks. We gave them our front three from Liverpool, and I think we have them just about set for game week 23 and potentially game week 24 as well.
Was that a question for me? Because I see TRizz here. I think that's the new name, isn't it? Nah, man, all good. I'm excited for this week. Let's get through it. Let's smash this week straight into double game week. I feel like we get the momentum. We've hardly even been being too aggressive in the game. We've kind of been being really patient with this team, and the rank is still really, really good for this stage in the season with a lot of our main chips left. So I think we're kind of laughing, really, and I think it kind of shows when you're not super reactive and you kind of just take an objective view and enjoy the game. We're still like in 3 digits, almost in breaking into the top 100k last week. So it's very, very all up to play for. And really not even getting into the bulk of like chip strategy and everything right now. So I think we're poised pretty well.
Yeah, no, we have a lot to figure out because we still have our triple captain. The manager chip opens up next game week as well. So lots to kind of sort out. But I do think that we'll have a big discussion next week, whether we triple captain Mo Salah or not for that double game week. But thank you for everyone for tuning in. Make sure you like and subscribe for all of our future content. Good luck in game week 23, and we'll see you guys next week. We're out. Peace.